Hello and welcome to another Six Sages Gaming set review. Today we're going to be talking about Wind, and let me tell you, these spoilers are going to blow you away. So up first we have Asura, which, damn, I love this card. So coming from Magic, anytime you present me with modes, I mean that automatically increases the playability of the card, and this is a one drop. Sign me up. So it has three different things you can choose. Choose up to two forwards, activate them, so just amazing for your opponent thinks that they're going to be able to attack safely. You recover one of your 9Ks and just break their forward. Choose up to 5 backups and activate them. So if you have 5 backups, which is very easy to do in Wind, you get to recover all your backups for 1 and then just continue to play the rest of the stuff that you might have in your hand. And then choose a character card of 2 or less in your break zone. Again, character card can be a forward or backup and add it to your hand so you can get stuff back like Zidane and all the other wonderful 2-drops. So we are starting off this spoiler very, very strong with Asura. So this is a card that I don't think anyone could even begin to argue, that this card won't see play. This card is absolutely going to see play. It is day 1 playable. I mean, you can build this with a Wind deck right away. Card's great. It has a lot of uses in a lot of different decks, so automatically gets our vote. I am very much looking forward to seeing how much foil versions of these of Asura are going to go for. So moving on, we have Arc. So this is all really just for the people who want to play the standard unit decks. It is an additional Maria effect, so it's a 2-drop, which is great because we need cheaper 2-drops anyways. Standard unit forwards you control gain plus 1,000 power, so this would really shine in a Wind Water standard unit deck, maybe a combination of Knights, a little bit of Chocobos, Mimes, what have you. You can give them all plus 1,000 power with this, then plus another 1,000 power with Maria, and then plus 2,000 power with Warrior of Light Water. Like that is a lot of power that you're adding up. So again, I know some people want to do some other element combinations, but my favorite has always been Wind Water, and this is just absolutely an auto staple for that deck. Now again, thankfully, from a balancing perspective, you can only have one of these, but plus 1,000 power, as we've seen a number of times, is good enough as is. So 100% expect this card to see play, and looking forward to the standard unit decks that get updated. We did have one on our channel that was focused around Knights and Chocobos, and it only gets better with this next set. So sign me up. I'm going to be playing this card. Now moving into a legendary for the set is Van, and this card is quite good. When he attacks, choose a forward you control. Then you get to return a backup of cost 2 or less to your hand. And if you do, activate that forward. So again, we're going to be playing Maria. So this is just granted it's going to be a 9K. So effectively what you can do is just give himself Brave. But that's not all. When you think about the combinations in, say, Jill, you can play a Jill, freeze 2 of your opponent's forwards, attack with Van, pop Jill back to your hand, play Jill again, freeze 2 other forwards. You can perma-lock your opponent down fairly easily, or at least remove some of their better guys. So I think Van has a lot going for him. He's a fine cost to power ratio. He has a very strong on attack declaration effect. And again, that gets around Emperor, since I know that's a lot on top of a lot of people's minds in terms of how can we get around cost of effects that say cost activate, or cost effect rather. But he does have the interesting note at the bottom, the white whirl, activate all Wind characters you control, again meaning forwards and backups. And what I like about that is we are moving more towards a deeper card pool, which means more towards these mono element decks, and his special can say activate your entire board if you are playing a mono Wind deck. So if you have 5 backups and 5 forwards, somehow, and his doesn't have a cost other than discarding a copy and paying a Wind, it's not that inconceivable that you're gonna activate your entire board. So I love this card, and again, anytime a card says a backup of 2 or less, so this is a card that has a condition on it where it only gets better as we get more cards. Now it does combo very well with another card that we've got in Opus too. That said, there is an unholy amount of cards that we can use this for, 2 drops or less. And again, if you check out Mognet, you can click on the 2-drop, you can click Opus 2 or both sets if you want, click on backup, and it'll give you all the cards that you can use with Van's effect. So again, if you guys haven't already, check out Mognet. It's a super helpful site. And then we have a Sexy Van. One drop 3k. That's usually what we see around that power to cost ratio. When he enters the field or attacks, choose one backup you control and activate it. So the interesting note here is going to be with Zemus. So we've already have beaten a dead horse really on this one, but the Fire Wind Unblockable deck has gotten so many tools and so many different great cards that you can use that I think it's going to be a viable threat in the next meta. Now, depending on which way you want to take it, you do have some of these powered cards, but again, especially if you're using Zemus and you're just like, all right, I can just activate this multiple times in a turn and make this unblockable, by all means, have at it. So again, Van's an enabler. Use Zemus, make Van unblockable. Attack, activate it, make your next guy unblockable, and it is going to be a very strong effect. So again, this Van and the other Van want to go in two very different directions, so you can probably get away with running them in those different decks, and each one of them does something special. Now again, if you are playing the legendary Van, you're going to want to include some number of his still named cards just so you can activate this special now and again. We've found that in testing and depending on how strong the special is, you want to run 4 of a card to activate the special in a game and be able to use it reliably. So numbers perspective, that's just the quick anecdotal about that. So this next guy is pretty edgy. I am, again, a super huge fan of tribal decks. For those that know, my first modern deck in Magic was Merfolk. In this game, we have the standard units. Now we're going to have ninjas. I love any time that I can put a deck like that together that says, just jam all of these forwards together that follow this one job class or whatever it might be, and they all get powered up by it, like 100% sign me up. So Edge, 4-drop AK, again, perfectly fine. The Job Ninja and cards named Ninja forwards you control other than Edge gain plus 1,000 power and first strike. No surprise here. Giving plus 1,000 power is huge, and giving first strike is leagues beyond that too in terms of importance. So absolutely, I am going to be building an ninja, maybe fire, maybe lighting. I don't know which way it's going to go yet. I have to look up what I think it's wind. Obviously with wind you get Yuffie and whatnot, so that's a given, but fire has a few ninjas, so does lightning, but I think it is limited to those 3 combinations. So it's either going to be a fire wind unblockable ninja deck, or it's going to be a lightning wind ninja deck that can add some stuff to remove problematic blockers, like with Odin's and what have you. So could be interesting. And again, another card that says keep this on your radar. It's a huge enabler, like Warrior of Light is. Obviously Warrior of Light gives 2k instead of 1, what have you, but it's a card that only gets better as more cards come out. So I'll be keeping an eye on this one. I'm not convinced that Ninja is going to have a place at the meta table, if you will, day 1 or even with Opus 2, but I think by the time Opus 3 comes out, we get a couple more cards, we could see it. Then we have Baby Edge. Edge cannot be blocked by a forward of cost 4 or more. When Edge deals damage to your opponent, activate all the backups you control. So again, activate all the backups you control. We've talked about Zemus, and again, we'll cover that card more in depth, and hopefully we'll catch all the cards that go with it. But Edge is just a great card again that says we're playing this deck that is all the unblockables, and we're going to make even more of our forwards unblockable for when we get to deal damage. So getting to make Aerith active, there's a lot of different backups that you want to be activating to begin with, but Zemus is obviously the named one here. So again, I think that there is enough forwards now in Opus 2 that we could have a unblockable based card in every forward slot in those decks. We have Zell, Edge, the new Tifa. Opus 2 gained quite a few cards. So 2-drop 3k can leave a little bit to be desired because it doesn't have protection. But then again, if it did, it would be on the same power level as Zidane. But I think being able to activate your backups is not to be overlooked, and that can be a very powerful effect. So keep an eye on this one. It's a pretty deceptive rare. We have a 5-drop backup. Kad Isana, the EX, enters the field, choose one forward of cost 5 or more, opponent controls, and break it. This is what a lot of people would just view as a better Alexander. Now the downside is that you can cast multiple Alexanders in a turn, where if you play this back up early on, you can't play another one. But I think this is perfectly fine to run as a 2 of in a lot of the wind-based decks, so sign me up. Not much needs to be said about this card, really. I do think Alexander and both this card will see more play in the next set as we see more 5 and 6 drops become relevant, so expect to see this card more often. Ranger, 2-drop standard unit backup. Put it into the break zone, choose one backup of cost 1, break it. Why? No. It's cool that it's a 2-drop backup. There's really not any 1-drop backups that we want to be using to break this with as of right now, so maybe keep an eye on this. Maybe it should have been, choose a backup of 2 and break it. That would have been fine. Probably a little bit too good, obviously, but with just breaking 1, I don't see this card doing much at all, so keep an eye on it, but it's getting a pass for now. Speaking of cards that are getting a pass, Sid, 3-drop 7k, so at least the power to cost ratio is fine, but your opponent shows his or her hand. The only possible thing that you could really be using this for is if you're playing a Tita's combo deck or any kind of all-in base deck. You could use this and see if it's safe to go for the combo or for Gilgamesh Morphing Time, for example. But ultimately, I'd rather just be playing a forward that's good enough, and if my opponent has the answer, I'm going to force my opponent to have the answer rather than see if they have it or not. So maybe we'll get a card in the future that says, look at your opponent's hand. If they have something getting an effect, who knows? But ultimately, this one is just getting a very hard pass for me with the time being. 3-drop White Mage. Enters the field, choose up to 2 wind characters and activate them. I just realized that as I'm recording this, it doesn't say other. I wonder if that's a typo. All right. So this is potentially a 1-drop backup, I guess. And that is a lot better than I thought. That's very versatile. I could have sworn this said other. So when White Mage enters the field, choose up to 2 wind characters, activate them. So because it will be in field by the time you use its ability, it can select itself. I was thinking more often you're going to be using this for after you attack to ready up or activate 2 of your forwards, which is fine too. Wow, that's a really strong comment now that I read that correctly. So yeah, I love this card actually now. It's very, very strong for what it wants to be doing. It helps you accelerate your game plan. If you combo this with, say, Aerith, now we have a lot of different cards that generate more resources for free. I can see Wind being a very fast-paced, accelerating type of deck with this next set. And I am super excited for this card now. So there you have it, folks. That is a great common. Capricious Thief, this is also just known as Budget Zidane. Cannot be blocked by a forward of cost 5 or more. Now that does hurt it a lot, I will say. I realize that it is a nerfed version of Zidane as View Will, but it should have at least, they could have kept it 4 or more. They really could have. At 5 or more, this card is just unfortunately terrible. Of course, it's worth noting that it could go in the Golbez deck and the Golbez X Death kind of deck, and it can be buffed up to a 6k, but you're just better off playing the legendary version of Zidane over that. So this is one of those cases where I really want mannequins to be good and I really love tribal decks, but ultimately I think this one's more of a trap that you would fall into trying to make it work when you can just play the other cards. So again, if you want a nice budget option, absolutely, but in terms of one card being strictly better than the other, I think you're best avoiding this card. 1-drop Chocobo. I am very excited for this card for a number of reasons. One, based on our budget standard unit deck, but also because of a summon that we'll be talking about in a moment. Chocobo giving your entire party first strike is insane. As you know, there was a little bit of confusion early on, but for first strike to work with your party, all party members must have it, and that's exactly what this Chocobo does. Now, again, it's a 1-drop 1k, so it dies to like a sneeze. I mean, there's too many things that this dies to. That said, it is a very powerful effect and something that I could absolutely have it see play. And again, since we just talked about White Mage and getting to play a bunch of low-costed things or playing a bunch of different backups for free, that helps cards like this accelerate into a game plan where you can just spam the field, get all these things out, and then you say Aerith Planet Protector to protect them all from EX Burst and just swing for the game. So Chocobo in combination with a deck we've already previewed on the channel in combination with a summon that we're going to talk about here in a minute, I think this card is going to be an insane common. Yes, I realize that it's still, dies to a sneeze, but I think it's fine. Going for another Ninja now, 1-drop 3k. If it deals damage to a 4 this turn, double that damage instead. Again, I love this card as well because standard unit, so it's going to get plus, it's going to go up to 4k with edge and first strike, so it can take out an 8k if you use the effect. And again, you start your turn, you just turn things sideways and attack. If your opponent blocks, you only have to discard one card to kill their, up to 4 or 5, some even 6 drops if you have edge on field. So this is absolutely, and I'm sure everyone would agree, an auto include in those ninja based decks. So I'm really looking for it. And the artwork is sick from 14. I mean, all the artwork from Final Fantasy 14 in this set is just amazing. So I cannot wait to see if it's going to be more Fire Wind or Wind Lightning. We'll see what the ninja deck ends up looking like, but that is absolutely a deck that we're going to be building pretty quickly out of the gate. Now, I harped on the Moogles quite a bit, and No is probably the best one. I forget off the top of my head what each one of them does, but I do remember looking at them and thinking this one is the best overall. Choose as many forwards as job Moogles you control and activate them. So again, you're going to be having 2. So it's a card that lets you just activate 2 forwards you control out of nowhere on your opponent. Yes, it does have a cost of 2 wind, but as you can tell, we are playing this deck that can accelerate very quickly our wind backups. So that's probably going to be fine. And again, anytime that you can threaten to activate 2 of your forwards and block favorably can put your opponent off from attacking for a few turns. So yes, this card does take a little bit of work to be good and to push it in that direction where you'd want to be playing it, but I definitely think this one is the more playable Moogle out of the gate and certainly only gets better as we get more cards. So this is certainly one that I would keep an eye on and see how the set develops going forward and seeing what element combination we go with to make this work as good as it is. And then we have Paine 3-drop 3k. Why? Just why? It is an EX burst, but when it enters the field, you may search for 1 card Yuna or 1 card Riku. So the really cute thing that you can do is just set up this tutor after tutor kind of ramp, if you will, but ultimately as a 3k, it's just not doing anything for you. And quite frankly, I'd rather just play the other Paine. If I'm going to be playing the Yuna Riku Paine combo, I'd rather play the one that says recover 3 backups and draw a card. And as we mentioned with White Mage and Aerith and now these other cards, Sura as well, that's letting us activate multiple things in a turn. Paine, the starter Paine is critical, absolutely critical for drawing cards and making sure that we're still churning through our deck at an appropriate pace. So I think this is an interesting card going forward that if we, for whatever reason, want to move away from that combo and maybe we just want to put Paine and Riku in a deck, for example, then sure, it could be fine. I will say I like this as an option for the mill deck, so you can you're more likely to find the backup Riku early on, which is very, very important for that deck to find early. But outside of that, I can't really see this card seeing a lot of play again. I could be wrong. And out of all of Opus 2 set review, or especially for this video, if I'm going to be wrong about a card, it's probably going to be this one. Because again, as we go forward with more sets, the playability is going to go up, but I am so stuck on using the starter Paine that I just couldn't see myself using this one over that. So we'll see. Barbariccia, one of the Archfiends, which Archfiends as a whole, it plays into a really cute Golbez type of deck, and maybe someone can make that work. I hate the idea of running a 5-color deck, even if you get to play Golbez for free, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, playing cards for free is always great, but the other Archfiends leave a little bit to be desired, except for this one, because Maelstrom does have a lot of potential. So deal each forward opponent controls damage equal to its power minus 1,000. There's a few other cards that we've already seen that can you can use Dancer to finish off, you can use Ishtola to ping things away. there's a lot of different cards that interact with this. The most obvious one, if you will, would be Dancer, where Dancer deals 1,000 damage to all their forwards. So this is effectively a board wipe in win for your opponent. Now, yes, you have to discard it. You have to tap or tap her and discard a win card or pay for 2 backups. So yes, there's a lot of cost that goes into this and a lot of setup. But that said, especially in the mill deck where again, the only way I was able to claw my way out of some of those places was because I played 2 Shantoto. But now you're telling me if I play an Earth, Wind, Mill deck and I can play 3 of this, I'll just splash a 1 or 2 of Dancer. And I can play this as another board wipe in the deck, and it's a 7k 4 that can at least maybe block a few things for me. Yes, sign me up. This is absolutely the card that deck wants. So this is going to be a very playable hero. And again, I'm sure it can go fine in that Golbez deck that we'll cover in the Lightning preview. And that's fine, but I think this card should not be overlooked for what it does in other types of decks. So this is one to keep an eye on, and I'm sure I've missed some other cards that also do these more ping type of effects. But again, putting them down to a power minus 1,000, there's so many more cards. Oh, Starter Veil 4, there you go. There's another random card. Deals 3,000 damage to all your opponents forward. Just stuff like that. Yes, it's a little bit more of a setup, but when you're potentially, well, depending on what backups you have, you're only paying 4 or 5, what have you, to wipe your entire opponent's board, plus discarding one of the same name, then yeah, sign me up. That is a perfectly fine spot to be at. So, card's great. I could see this card seeing a ton of play. Balthier, I was a little upset about. 4-drop 8k, which is fine. Whenever one of your backups enter the field, you get to activate them and then choose a 4, deal it 2,000 damage. So we can play this game where we get to get multiple activations of him. So you can just start 2, 4, 6. 6 is probably about the luckiest you're going to get with it. 6,000 damage. If they have a Minwu, that's going to be a little bit difficult for you, but you'll have plenty of ways to destroy backups, or you can just play around it and not include it. But ultimately, I thought it was a very interesting card. His Fires of War does make up for it a little bit, but it pushes the card in a very different direction. He cannot be chosen by summons or an ability your opponent controls until the end of the turn. Or sorry, just any summoner ability, so even your own, but you wouldn't use it for that anyways. And then gains first strike until end of turn, so you'd never activate it when you're trying to buff him per se. But that can be relevant, so you can give him first strike. So this is a card that wants to wants to have Brave. So in a perfect world, you could activate Fires of War, and then tap him after he attacks with whatever they block with, and deal 10k with first strike. That's kind of the perfect world for it, but ultimately he doesn't have Brave, so he doesn't have that luxury. So he feels like more of this defensive card that wants to combo off with being able to add a lot of ping damage, and then his special is an interesting one. So we'll see how this card shakes up. I think it's a very interesting card, but I do like Van a bit better in terms of just overall utility for what the deck would offer. Again, they combo very well together, don't get me wrong there, but in a vacuum it does leave a little bit to be desired. Then we have the 3-drop version. Enters the field, you may search your card, search for 1 Fran and add it to your hand. So it's a nice tutor. 3-drop 6k, not a lot to talk about here. Wish it was a 7k, but it does tutor you up a card, so it's a 1-drop, so to speak. Moving on from that, though, we'll talk about Fran when we get to it. Penelo, all the forwards you control have Sky Pirate or Pirate. They gain plus 1,000 power. So again, I love those tribal decks, but there's not enough cards for this one to work as of right now. Having another card, especially in Wind, where we have Maria, which Maria is great because it can buff all of your fours by 1,000, but only by 1,000. Where if you run some of the other elements with Wind, let's say you're running a fire Wind deck and you have all fire forwards, you could run Labao, I believe is their name is, and Maria, and they'd get effectively 2k. That said, with this, we can now run her and Maria to give our Sky Pirate or Pirates plus 2,000 power. It's also a 2-drop, so that's fine as well. So it allows us to play something early. So could be very interesting going forward what those Sky Pirates and Pirate-based decks might look like. But right now, we're lacking a little bit of the cards that we need. So Fran. So this is where it does get a little bit better. If you play her, which is a 2-drop, you can you can choose Balthier, give it plus 1,000 power, which again, comboing that now with his ability that gives him first strike is very, very good. And then you can give him haste by paying 1 and dulling her. So again, it's a backup, so it doesn't get the plus bonus from the card we just talked about. But it seems like Square Enix really wanted to have a Sky Pirate or pirate themed deck, and we're just lacking a little bit in terms of what forwards we have available. If I'm not mistaken, there was a couple water pirates off the top of my head, so maybe you build the wind water pirate deck. It might be interesting, but I think you'd probably want like 1 or 2 more really good forwards that you can use. Again, could be wrong. Haven't had a lot of time to brew with Opus 2 yet, so I haven't been able to like put those lists down on paper yet. But just as kind of like an off the top of my head kind of feel it, I think there needs to be 1 or 2 more cards. But if you're going to be playing Balthier in a deck and you just need another backup, I would absolutely want to include this one just because you can buff him to a 9k and then potentially 10k if you have Maria as well. And having that extra added power can be extremely relevant when you're trying to be more aggressive, or if you're stuck on defense, sometimes being a 10k is just good enough. And then we have the mini Barts for a common, and I like this card a lot actually. So it is a mannequin and it is a common unit, but when it enters the field, you get to choose 2 wind characters you control and activate them. Again, this can be other forwards or backups. So in theory, this can be a 1-drop 7k, again, assuming you're running Maria and what have you. As you guys know, I really do love running Hope currently. One, because it does have an EX burst, so you can find it and you can tutor it up. But it does give you the option to, especially if you're playing Aerith, which I'm sure will be a staple going forward, you can play Hope off of it and then leave Aerith up. And that is very important in a lot of decks. So an okay costed card that has a huge potential to untap some backups, let us play another card, or just activate 2 of our forwards. It's just a very versatile card. I think this one is certainly one of the more playable commons in this element, and I do look forward to seeing which direction that we can take this card in. Anytime I get to ramp my resources and play multiple cards in a turn, I am absolutely game for. So we talked about Chocobo and we talked about a few other cards, and this specifically, which Shemahazai, I believe is how you pronounce it, which I'm sure butchered. I'm just going to call it the Whisperer. This card is nuts. Absolutely nuts. Each forward you can only be blocked by a forward with a cost inferior or equal to its own this turn. This is where I would say go back to our Wind Water standard unit deck that we put together, and we saw the Chocobos, we saw the Knights, we saw the Mime, for example. And then the dual series we did for it, you guys saw where we got to be in a position where on the turn before we just spammed out all these 1 and 2 drops, all the Knights and what have you, and that was fine. We were ahead in the race. We got to untap, and we got to use Aerith's Planet Protector, and we just were able to swing underneath what he had. So now you're telling me that I can play this card, make my entire team unblockable, and then use Aerith's Planet Protector to make sure none of your EX bursts are going to hit. Ooh, that is real spicy, folks. At that point, your only out would be in a Veil 4 Legendary or a Veil 4 starter if their power is low enough. But it's very limited on what you might be able to find to get yourself out of position. So I think this card is going to be, so sure, it is very sided, and it goes into one very specific deck, but that is absolutely fine for what it does. And I'm going to die to this card a lot in this next set, that I can guarantee you. And I won't even be upset when I lose to this card, because if a person is able to put in all that work into a deck and pulls this off and has Aerith to protect it all, you probably deserve to win that game. I love this card, and again, it's going to be something that we have to watch going forward, because it's a 1-drop for crying out loud out of all things, but this is a card that is positioned to always be relevant for the length of from now till 5 years from now. As we get more cards, the meta develops, we get more 1 and 2 drops, let's say. This is a card that we have to be conscious of. So I am absolutely looking forward to finding out which deck plays this first and does the best with it. Again, I'll probably start with the Wind Water standard unit deck just because, but I could see a few decks that this goes into, even if it's limited, but for what it does, it is absolutely insane. Riku to drop backup, enters the field, activate all forwards you control. So this is where it starts to get cute. We had talked about Van earlier, that can bounce the 2-drop backup to your hand. So we can set up our board state where we can just attack it out with all of our guys. We don't care. We bounce this to our hand. We play it again for a 2-drop and then just activate all our forwards. That's some good shit. So I am very much looking forward to this. For those that have played with the 5-drop Barts, which was would only activate your wind characters, as you know, if you played a mostly wind heavy deck, sometimes just hitting that would be good enough to wall off your opponent and they wouldn't be able to attack those last couple points of damage. And now you're telling me I can EX burst this and activate all the forwards I control instead, regardless of what element they are, and I can manipulate this with Van, and it's a 2-drop that I can play very easily at any point in the game. Yeah, this is pretty good. Again, it's going to be limited. It doesn't have an S ability, obviously, or anything like that. You need to have a board established already to do anything with it, but being able to give your entire team a pseudo Brave really is what it is. Should not be discounted at all. So not sure exactly what deck other than comboing with the obvious fan that this is going to go into, but this card is absolutely playable. And I really am looking forward to seeing this card in action. Then we have Redus, who is a Sky Pirate, so we finally did see another pirate. Must attack once per turn if possible. When he attacks, the forwards other than him gain plus 1,000 power. So this is nice because it's a little Anthem effect. He's a 5-drop 9k, so it's okay with the stats that it is. It can buff the rest of your forwards. It goes in the Sky Pirate deck, which needed a few more cards. It's only a common, which is interesting, but we could only run one in the field at a time, so we can't have any multiple battle tricks like that. But it's interesting to see that, again, anytime we get that plus 1,000 buff, it's going to be huge. And we have Maria, which is just a given staple at this point. I think I've mentioned enough to make him a 10k, so it can be very difficult for your opponent to block this card. So again, I am all for Anthems in a deck. Giving your entire team plus 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, whatever it is going to significantly help you push through for points of damage. So this card is not something that I would play in every wind deck. I think it's, if I'm playing the Sky Pirate deck and I want to go into that like heavy themed type of deck, then absolutely. But this will be an interesting one to watch going forward. And then lastly, the 4 that we talked about. So that was all that we have for that. And wind, I did have a little bit harder of a time picking these. The legend is kind of a given. I think Van just has the most potential to just go off the wall and be insane as even more sets come out, because again, it's a card that's only going to get better as 2-drops get better, and I guess technically some 1-drops, but I don't think we'll ever really see a 1-drop that has some relevant effect on it, what have you. Hero for Asura, which is it's an insane card. I love modes. I love all 3 of those different options. This is a card that can be played at multiple times. It's a card that helps ramp us by playing multiple things in a turn. Sign me up. At rare, we have the Whisper. As I mentioned, this is a little bit more of it's very confined into which direction it goes in, but for the decks that it goes into, it's absolutely insane for the power level. And again, I very, very likely see this card that as it's played, it's going to end the game on the spot in win decks. And I think that's what makes it so good. So it's something that you want to build a deck around this, but that can also survive on a plan B. And that Warrior of Light Wind Water deck is absolutely that type of deck. So already has a deck for it. It's easy to slide this in there, and it's going to be great. And then for common, I picked the Wanderer. Again, I just really like this effect. I realized as I was recording this, a white mage is way better than I thought it was going to be. But I also do like forwards that they help us accelerate our board state and let us play something else that turn. So again, 6k being a little underwhelming. Playing Maria bumps it up to 7, which makes us feel a little bit better, but ultimately you're going to be playing this for the fact that you can activate either 2 wind forwards or 2 wind backups. So we'll see what's going to be of those commons. So again, there was a few other ones I would have picked, But that is all I have for this spoiler video for you guys, or set review rather. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Wind is one that I don't play with a ton, admittedly. I think there's a couple really interesting archetypes that we're going to be getting out of Opus 2 with this element. So I think these 4 cards are going to be, big role players going forward. Maybe not so much the common, but at least the first 3. I'd love to hear what you guys have. So drop us down in the comments below what kind of list that you've been working on. Shoot us a list in the comments. We might feature it on the channel. We love getting you guys involved and getting more deck spotlights out there. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. We do greatly appreciate it, and we've just been going ham pushing out some content as we ramp up to Opus 2 launching in the United States, and we are so excited to get our hands on cards. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next 6 Sages Gaming set review. Have a good one.